Mason. I haven't heard any others. No, I haven't heard an apology.
Yeah, I've had.
Oh, you have, sorry.
Yes.
And totally, or for
No, he'll be late.
He'll be late. Thanks, Bernie. So just to confirm a few things, outline my role in a moment too, but just to confirm a few things, the agenda order is as circulated with you. So we will start with the Levin access car parking. That'll be open. Then the town centre, which is public excluded. Lake Horowhenua, which is it's public excluded. I thought that one was open, actually. Lake Horowhenua, I thought that one wasn't open. Is that? Oh, it's public excluded, so my apologies. And councillor only time in the Ratepayers Assistance, so it is S on the order paper there. So just to run through background, mainly for the public, but also to some extent for ourselves. So the expectation is that we have all done the pre-reading, so the strong focus during our sessions today is on giving feedback and where appropriate to give guidance. There may be questions for clarification, of course, but not relitigating what we've already read, hopefully. So also just to note that this is the first of a change of direction where councillors will, according to a roster, take turns in chairing these meetings. I'll be kicking it off. There will be circulated, I think, probably today, both the roster itself and also just a helpful guide for what the role of the chair or the facilitator is. That is that bit. So look, today, please, my plea from the table is maximum involvement. That we've done the pre-reading, we'll hear from officers, and I really want this to be a very interactive meeting where we all play our part. We are sticking with the 45 minutes and the 15-minute break because that was the will of councillors. Sorry, Benny. So we are going to aim for that, and we are now 3 minutes into the first of the 45 minutes. So if I could now welcome our three presenters for the first item, which is Robin, Catherine, and David. Welcome and take it away.
Thank you, and nice to see you all, and trust you had a good summer break. Today it is a team effort. We'll be presenting the two topics, the access and car parking piece, and then as I say, a break, and then going into the next town centre briefing as well. In front of you, you'll each find my car collection, which I've lent you for the next hour. I won't give you the pleasure of letting you know whether or not I decided which car was based on your personality type or not, but it is hopefully another step in making this another memorable presentation as we focus on town centre access and parking. Today, this follows on from essentially probably one of your last briefings before Christmas, where we did present around the town centre and in particular around the car parking and access strategy work. And what's happened over that period of time has been that we've been out for community engagement, received some really good feedback, and eager to share that with you today. As part of that journey, as we continue to step towards preparing a car parking and access strategy. So in a moment, I'll be handing over to Catherine, who's going to lead the presentation today. We've also got Robin here supporting us, but do just want to also draw attention to on the back of some of this feedback and some of the councillor questions, it has highlighted some areas where there is some additional information that would be good for us to have, and so we're really grateful to have in the back row Frankie Guy, who's one of our scholarship students here at the moment and is currently doing a little bit more of that audit, if you like, of some of the extra information that we has been highlighted that we benefit from. So if you're out in the street, you may see go over the next week or so out there either measuring, counting, just making sure we have got those accurate numbers. So very conscious of the time that we have, and obviously wanting to make sure that whilst we've got some information to get across today, is about hearing from you as well. So I'll hand over to Catherine, who will lead us through it.
Good morning, everyone, and good to see your faces again this side of Christmas and the New Year. So today, the purpose of the presentation for Levin Access and Car Parking is to provide you with a summary of the community feedback on some of the questions, specific questions that will help inform the final car parking strategy. And so what we want from today's workshop is to inform you of that feedback and seek guidance and feedback on the draft strategy and understand what good looks like to elected members. So towards the end of the presentation, we've got a series of questions that we'll be asking, and we're hoping, to Councillor Allen's point, some really great involvement from you to help us inform some of the strategy. So the questions that we're asking overall are, do the community priorities align with your expectations for the town centre? So given the pre-reading went out, we're hoping that you did have a look at the strategy and had a look at some of those community priorities. Level of comfort with the draft strategy and the approaches, parking management, accessibility and safety, and just keeping in mind that the strategy itself is not specifically focused on car parking alone. It's around how our community accesses the Levin town centre, albeit by way of car, walking, cycling, but also how they navigate the shops and things like that as well. Are there any specific areas of the town centre that need a greater focus? So in terms of the draft strategy, we've identified quite a large area. We also had put in there some hotspots, some different areas that we were focusing on. And so some of that feedback from you is are those areas good enough? Are they wide enough? Or do we need to broaden that focus a little bit more? And then, as I've touched on, in terms of access and parking, we'll be asking what does good look like for Levin's town centre from an elected member's perspective. Today, you are in active strategy development, so we're seeking feedback and direction on what good looks like. So this is really great statistics for us. So we went out for a light touch consultation, and we say light touch because there were a few questions asked. We don't usually go out with surveys alone, but in terms of the engagement, we got over 283 online survey respondents. We got 15 physical survey respondents, and we had over 30 council expo participants. So those numbers are actually pretty substantial given that we engaged over a couple of months over the Christmas New Year period, and as you would have seen online, it did generate quite a bit of community interest. And I'll go through that feedback. Largely, a lot of that has been really positive, which is great. It will give us some really good anecdotal feedback to support the development of the strategy as well. So some of the key insights that came from that feedback was parking. That's what we're talking about. It was around availability, usability, and clarity of rules. So signage, time limits, accessibility. So there was a large number of direct quotes from the community and feedback around steep streets, particularly Oxford Street, footpath conditions and accessible parking. So there's one of the top priorities that the community has picked out in terms of their feedback. Safety, as we know, we've got a state highway that runs through the centre of town, and safety, a number of comments around feeling unsafe on Oxford Street, crossings and pedestrian comfort. So safety is a big one, and then balance as well. So there was quite a bit of feedback from the community around vibrancy and making sure that there is a balance between that vibrancy while retaining practical vehicle access as well. So in terms of those issues that I've just outlined, of those large numbers of the 283 pieces of feedback that we got, availability, 141 mentions through our survey. Design and or condition, there were 86 mentions. Accessibility, 78 mentions. Time limits, 80 mentions. Safety, 74 mentions. And the cost of parking, 41 mentions. So across the board, there wasn't actually, apart from availability, there's actually a general consensus that some work or some consideration needs to be given to design, accessibility, time limits and safety. And so the intent of the strategy is to provide council with the mandate to move forward with a strategic approach and just have that planned approach to access and parking. So as we know, we are a car heavy, we're rural, we have Levin Town Centre is the hub of that rural community, so it's no surprises that 274 of those respondents actually access town by driving. It was a multi-choice question, so some of them do walk in as well, but it probably just reiterates that we are a car heavy town, and so managing access and car parking is important. In terms of the experience of our community finding car parking, sometimes hard. So when we break that down, many of the respondents found car parking difficult, particularly near shops. So we didn't ask for any demographics of the survey participants in terms of age, and perhaps their mobility status and things like that, and that potentially could have skewed some of this data. But for elected members, it's probably good to see that majority of the time it's a lot of the time it's always easy. Sometimes hard. When we start pulling it down, it might be things like accessibility. So some of the feedback that we got is that people will choose to not park on Oxford Street, for instance, because they feel unsafe, or the gradient of Oxford Street is too limiting for them in their mobility park, so they might end up having to go to Levin Mall car park for an accessible park, but it might be hard for them because they might actually omit from going to their shop because of that. So there's quite a bit of feedback that came through in the survey specific to those types of things. So that experience finding parking could be skewed based on what type of person was accessing that. So as we're going through the presentation, I've just pulled out some quotes, as I think it's quite important, as I did with the summary of feedback, is that just probably pointing out that it was a really good mix of the community that fed back to us, and so the top parking issue was around parking availability. So there aren't, so some of those comments that supporting that, there aren't enough car parks where people actually need them. So that's what I talked about just in terms of are there enough mobility car parks on Oxford Street, and that's some of the work that Frankie's actually doing. It's giving us a bit of an audit to understand how we actually can work on that feedback. Time limits make it stressful if you're not too quick. Accessible parking is often too far from the shops. So just you're starting to see those themes come through a little bit as well. But the strategy, when we actually finalise that and start putting in some of this feedback, it definitely needs to have a multi-layered approach and consider availability, design, accessibility, enforcement, and particularly in high demand areas like Oxford Street. So the strategy is really important for us from a revocation point of view, because that's when we start having those conversations with NZTA around what our community has said, and this is anecdotal feedback. So it's really important when we start having that conversation to work on that fair revocation deal, that we are listening to the community. So we did ask the community a number of questions where they had to type out their answers and give us their direct feedback rather than just survey responses. So what are your ideas for managing parking demand and turnover? So I've just pulled out a few quotes. Paid parking or restricted for town centre. However, other parking needs to be unlimited for workers to park free of charge. So when we link that to the draft strategy we've talked about, it's not unreasonable to expect those working in town all day that there's a little bit of a walk to get to that work to their workplace if they are having free parking. Easy to read meter screens, so a person might be willing to come in and they don't have any issues, but the issue that they have is that our infrastructure doesn't support them, and so that could be a quick win for us. Levin is quite well serviced for parking on the outskirts of town, but that may change depending on the Durham car park proposal. Free or short-term parking will encourage people to visit the town centre. Mix of free for up to 4 hours, limited time zones, clearly designated mobility parking areas, and some all-day paid parking. So when we think about the question that we ask the community, what are your ideas for managing parking, demand and turnover, those are some pretty positive responses and well thought out responses from the community. It's not negative. It's not saying just give everyone free parking. And the feedback has come through that these comments are consistent, so they're all quite constructive, which has been really good to see. What helps or hinders getting around? So many respondents highlighted challenges moving around the town centre, and a recurring issue was the steep gradient of Oxford Street, so affecting walking, comfort and accessibility. Over 40% of respondents noted difficulties with footpaths, street slope and pedestrian safety, indicating that gradient is a substantial barrier. Narrow or uneven footpaths, unsafe crossings and fast-moving traffic also limit mobility for some of our older community families and people using mobility aids. So, some of these quotes: the steep hill makes it tiring to get to shops if you're walking or using a pram. Footpaths are uneven in places, which makes it tricky for scooters and mobility aids. So, whilst we're talking about access and car parking, some of this stuff does flow into other areas of council, of which this strategy wouldn't be looked at as in isolation. So, whilst we're developing the strategy, it's a strategy that will be embedded across the work of council. So, we talk about footpath, that's where we bring our roading team in as well. Are there any specific parts of the Levin town centre where access is difficult or dangerous? So again, Oxford Street features quite heavily. Driving between the main lights, most of the main street, especially with a mobility scooter. I've regularly fallen with hitting dips, bumps, cracks in the pavement. Crossing Queen Street and Bath Street. Accessing any part of the main road in the town centre can prove difficult and dangerous. And then just to the comment that I made earlier, often it's better to travel around the outside of town to avoid delays and traffic volumes, and it's easier to walk into town or to the point of parking further away from the town centre and making an effort to get there because they want to feel safe. So what do you think is most important for the future of Levin Town Centre? So again, I've just pulled out some feedback from the community. Give the town a heart, make sections pedestrian friendly. Parking is okay around the library, but parking on the main street is really hard to get out of trying to get out into traffic. The warehouse area is always hard to park. Make it easier for elderly and disabled members of the public. Making it safer and letting people enjoy the town, not worried that you're going to get run over and get crashed into when trying to back out onto the road. Plenty of accessible paid parking or restricted in main centre, however other places not restricted and free. We need to make sure there is adequate parking for a bigger town and council is not short-sighted selling off land for money. Be fully accessible. Lower the centre height of Oxford Street to create easier flow for parking, very daunting for elderly people. Ensuring it as easy as possible for locals and visitors to visit the shops, especially once O2 opens. Free parking and safer cycle walking access is critical. Safety for all. So I've probably landed with that one in terms of safety for all because that being a safe street is more welcoming, or being a safe town centre, it's more welcoming. Practical vehicle access and parking obviously must remain, but from a Levin Town Centre redevelopment point of view and from a revocation point of view, there's some really good research that supports slowing down traffic and pedestrian-friendly streets. Not only do they enhance a sense of safety, but they also enhance economic productivity as well. So from a vibrancy point of view in Levin Town Centre, we're not just wanting to transform Levin Town Centre, we're wanting to really build the heart of that and bring back that retail focus, but making sure that people come to a destination, not actually just driving their vehicles and get out, but we want them to feel safe. So with all of that in mind and all of those responses, in summary, there's some conclusions and some considerations. So whilst we're not asking, we're not saying that this feedback is final, these are some considerations that we would take from the community feedback and implement or include them in the strategy. And once we finalise that, hopefully that can be seen and felt through the strategy. So In conclusion, safety, accessibility and parking are definitely interconnected priorities for the access and parking strategy, and the community, as you can see with some of that commentary, supports balanced improvements and enhancing pedestrian safety without reducing that vehicle access. So predominant form of mode of transport was cars, so they still want to have that vehicle access, but they want safety and accessibility. Oxford Street is definitely a focal point for targeted improvement, so again supports that conversation with revocation. But more importantly, the reason why we're targeting Levin Town Centre transformation, because we know that the state highway isn't going to be running through there anymore. Potential considerations for inclusion in this strategy: improve parking management, turnover and clarity, enhance accessibility, focusing on footpaths, reducing slopes and accessible parking, implement traffic calming, crossings and light signal improvements, retaining mixed parking layouts, integrate walking, cycling and vehicle access into cohesive street design. So those are just some small considerations from that vast amount of feedback that we got from the community. And like we've said, we've already got Frankie out there from some of the councillor conversations and questions that we've had coming through, doing a bit of an audit so that we can better understand what we have in front of us. I'm now going to hand over to David, who's going to walk you through some of those questions around what does good look like from an elected member's point of view.
So in a moment, we'll turn it over to hear from you. We know that you've had some visibility to the draft strategy. You've been part of some of the conversations already. You've now had a chance to see and hear some of the community feedback. And what we're looking to do is take on board that feedback, along with your feedback, and continue to advance the strategy. So we're not looking to suddenly rush the strategy to council next week. This is something which we want to take a little bit longer to continue to work through with you. As we are listening to your feedback, the questions on the screen are some of the things that we're trying to get answers to and get clarity on in terms of, as a council, what does good look like? So when you're speaking, when you're providing some of your thoughts and feedback, we're trying to understand, well, what does well-managed parking look like for shoppers, visitors, workers? How does council view that split between short stay versus long stay and keeping that balance? What needs to happen to make it safe, welcoming for both people and cars? Really interested in what role you want the town centre to play in influencing how long people stay and how much they spend in the town centre. How far are you wanting the strategy to go in terms of changing local parking and potentially shopping behaviours? And then what is it that in a couple of years' time, maybe at the end of this term, would tell you that the strategy we've put in place and the steps that we're taking are actually working, or it's been a success? What are those things that are going to do that? So that's what we're listening to as we now turn it over to you to sort of provide your feedback in terms of comments on the strategy that you've seen to date, comments on the public feedback, comments on what we've talked about already.
And David, are you suggesting we work through in order, or whether we just put those up as prompts and people respond as they see fit? I prefer the latter, but what are your thoughts?
Exactly that. Put them as considerations and try to frame it as these are what we're sitting here trying to make sure we've got a good understanding of as we hear your feedback, which we appreciate will probably be quite varied and cover a range of aspects in relation to access and parking. But this is the stuff that's really going to help us in terms of shaping. So no, not expecting specific answers to each of those, but we'll be listening out for that.
That's great. So it's a free-for-all in terms of those prompts there. But we might, if we get time, just to see if there's any bits that have not been addressed. So over to the table.
Thank you, Catherine and David, for your presentation. I echo quite a lot of the feedback that's been given, especially around Oxford Street and the safety. A lot of the feedback that's been given to me has been reversing out into at Main Street. It's always been an issue. Seen so many accidents. Definitely one of those focuses that will need to be looked at as a priority for me. In terms of the parking, yes, I agree with the mix of parking, whether it's 4 hours, parking all day in limited zones. It's just providing options for the public. Always, I feel it's important to have limits in the main shopping zones, just to be proactive with shopping and those visitors who might only be here for potentially about maximum of 2 hours, to give them that availability, and absolutely just having the outer streets for the workers in town, just giving them access.
Hello, sorry, I'm rushing lots of things as we go. First of all, I just want to say amazing work and fantastic, and thank you so much. It's really heartening, and I really appreciate you going to the community first to get that feedback to inform how we move forward. And it was very thoroughly done, and I really, I'm really happy that we had the responses. So first of all, thank you so much. That was wonderful. A few things that are general from my point of view, and then I'll just do some specifics through those questions, if that's okay. Eventually, it would be great to see an accessibility audit completed as we move along the process, just to make sure that we've got that the mobility group of seniors, prams, and younger people, as we hope to bring them into the area. At the moment, we're not tying parking to the raw population growth or fixed ratios. What I can see that's happening, which is still fantastic, is that we're looking at the surveys, the target utilisation, assumptions of behaviour change, O2NL, and rail improvements. So as we move forward, it would be great to see the cumulative demand of the town centre as things change and grow, and also if the intensification of that proceeds faster than our transport options. Like we have that backstop, like what happens if and what happens if, which would be really wonderful. With a residential development parking issue that they no longer have to provide parking, keeping in mind as we move forward, please, how we look at short stay parks, mobility parks, visitor parks with that increased population within the town centre, and how their parking is going to impact the spaces that we have, and making sure we keep that in our assumption as we move forward now, just so that we don't have to go revisit and do the whole thing, which I'm sure you're doing anyway. Then I've got, sorry, going through. Oh yes, keeping in mind Salisbury Street as we go through and we test for feedback. If that's all taken away, how are we going to move forward? Then we've got, oh yes, so then I've got, so the meter screens, the only thing I can think of that people have told me, and I don't know if this is right because I always press the button at the end, I think some of that comes from the fact that you have to press so many yeses on that meter that at the end of it, when it says, do you want a receipt, most people just leave, and they don't realise that if you press no or you press yes, the money goes through. So that can be a complication, and it's not just Levin, it's a lot of the parking meters around the areas. So that might be something to keep in mind. In terms of our older population, I've heard from our residents that there is a real worry for them when they're backing out of Oxford Street, and from a specialist in senior fitness situation, older people lose a lot of their spatial awareness. They also don't have the eyesight, and they become a lot more concerned. So it is very dangerous for them backing out of Oxford Street. That's why I think you probably know they brought that in mind. And then with the mobility scooters on the pavements, because of the way the pavements have been graded, the mobility scooters can tip very easily. So when they hit a certain part of the pavement, you often see them wobbling around. And in terms of the safety with the crossings, there was a very big concern about Oxford Street and Queen Street. The reason being is not because of I think the way it's designed, but because the lights aren't long enough for the older people, for our seniors to cross, and those with mobility issues to cross. And then I've nearly had myself and my kid taken out because someone went through a red light round a corner when I had a green light. So sometimes the driving can be a situation there. One of the Grey Power, which I'd love to bring in here, said, oh, we've got a fantastic example. We can solve this. We just have that crossing there where you go at the same time, that X crossing. Don't know if that would work, but as an elected member, I'm bringing their feedback to the table. In terms of what does well-managed parking look like, for shoppers, visitors, and workers, I absolutely agree that we need a mixture of that short-term and long-term parking. For business reasons, it's really important that we have that short-term space to see whether or not we can increase business along that main street. But at the same time, a mix of the disability and senior parking, which would have short stay, but short stay looks different to short stay for, say, the general population. And short stay will look different for mums with 2 kids, 3 kids screaming, won't get into the car. Well-managed parking means that people in long stay are able to enjoy the focal point, and we keep in mind what are those things in Levin that we have that people will want to go and see, and how can we ensure that the parking measures up to their ability to be able to spend the money, go and see a film, or go and watch a match, or whatever it is that we're hoping to increase in the future. Safe, I think we've gone through that. And the only other thing before I let everyone else jump in, sorry everybody, is what role do you want the town centre to play in influencing how long people stay? I want people to say it's very easy to get around Levin. There's plenty of different options for us. Sometimes it's a walk, but hey, we've got you know that you can go into Levin. Don't go to Palmerston North to go to Focal Point. Stay in Levin to go to Focal Point, because you've got these fantastic parks here, and it's really easy to get in and out, which it's not sometimes in some of the other areas. And that we do increase cycling. We don't have huge transport options for people at the moment, so car is one of the only ways that they can get around, especially. And last thing, keeping in mind that older populations are increasing around New Zealand exponentially, not just in Levin. We are hitting a very large increase, and already in the last few years, our data is not correct at the moment in terms of, I think it was 26%. I think it's gone up to 31, 33 already in the last 2 years of our older population. Thank you so much, though. It was fabulous.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. That saves me saying a lot because I don't have to repeat it, so I'll focus on a couple of other things. What I couldn't pick out on what the current limit was, and picking up from Councillor Young's, was in consulting the food providers and what's a reasonable time for people to dine versus other shopping options as well. So I was just wondering if that will help do that multi-layer approach, which I totally support. The other one of the key aspects I also had was around making sure the strategy was future fit, and that was just an inclusion of statement that the council officers have the ability to work with providers for electrical vehicle charging as part, if an opportunity came available. I'm not saying council pays or puts in electric charging stations. I'm just trying to make sure the document's future fit, so you don't have to keep coming back. And the other final one is to be able to know if it's working well. Everything comes at a cost, and therefore is this something, as us as councillors, we need to make sure we're considering the long-term plans, because to know if it's working well in 2 to 3 years, there would need to be investment by us in the next couple of years. So I was just wondering if that was something that we needed to highlight for ourselves. But again, thank you very much. I found the strategy was really great, and having this lovely consultation is the icing on the cake. Thank you very much for that.
Hi team. Because of our 45-minute rule, I'll follow up with an email after, because I've got a few things, but I'll just high-level headings. Direction of travel, absolutely agree with. Thanks for all the hard work on that. As I went through the strategy, I was thinking our key message needs to be and I think it's already there, it's kind of like the right park at the right place. And that's got to be like at the heart in terms of the car parking component of the strategy. I did wonder if it would be useful for us, and I know it's on like page 31-ish, we talk about what we mean by short stay, long stay, all that, but I feel like we need to be really clear, even around this table, like what short stay means to one person could mean something different. So really defining our terms, because for me, I think we might have a little bit of a blind spot in terms of around that ultra short stay. So like that sub 5 minutes, want to park and go to an ATM or run and drop a prescription and and so in terms of that scale of kind of how we're defining things, I think it would be an important step. Lifting up, I do like the principles in here. I think they're spot on. I think they do reflect the community feedback. What I would like us to do is probably have really cement in a really more firm kind of user experience target. So one, finding a car park. So if we set ourselves a target that should be no more than 5 minutes to find a car park in the part of town that you want. I think that, whether that's practical or not, but I think there needs to be a finding a car park target, and then kind of a user experience target across the different types of users for that walking once you've parked. So for a all-day worker, it might be that it's five minutes or 500 meters. If it's covered, might be and so I that you've kind of got it on page 30 in terms of the stakeholders, but I think there's some more we could do there, and I've got some suggestions which I'll email through. I think that messaging is around that in time it's about more, not fewer parking options, but not necessarily car parks. Being really clear about the language, that it's about options and availability and access, and they might not be council owned or council provided, or even curbside. Keen on us making sure that there is that, in terms of signage, messaging, and the clarity piece. I'm quite keen for us to make that a real strategic priority, not just a sort of operational detail that we think about later. And so I think that's I'll offer some further suggestion around that. Having worked in Wellington and lived in Wellington, I kind of don't want us to repeat the mistakes of a city around how they do demand management. And so I think there's some things that we can learn not to do from other centres, and I'd be keen for us to pick those up, and I'll send those through. The other thing that has been on my mind has been the idea of surge capacity. So, I was thinking about in the connection to the town centre and the domain, and often, one of the things that's been put forward by groups and people around Salisbury Street and the potential disposal of that was loss of that car parking capacity for events. And so how could our car parking strategy provide for that surge capacity, whether it's at a practical level, maybe it's turning a 2-lane street into a 1-lane street for that particular day, or that kind of thing. So I'm not trying to get into solutions, but just how could we incorporate that whole concept of surge capacity when we need it. Pretty keen on us also signalling in the strategy that in time we do want to look at not changing behaviour, but changing options. And so that's through working with business and developers to look at whether it's incentives or commercial arrangements for additional car parking, or and in time also looking at other opportunities, whether it's Kiwi Rail land or other land like that, to kind of repurpose that or refocus that to support our strategy where it's appropriate. Keen to also, I'll send through some commentary which kind of gets into the weeds on the action plan, because I like the action plans that are really, really clear about the direction, and there's just a few little things I'd love to just feed into and test. That's my band pack.
I'll be a lot quicker. I think this proves that, in fact, the parking situation we're in is probably a hell of a lot better than most towns around New Zealand. We are very fortunate to have 300 car parks within 50 metres of our main street. There wouldn't be many towns in New Zealand that cater for people like that. Oxford Street's the problem, obviously, and that's been a problem for many years because of the amount of traffic that is now going through there. The slope of Oxford Street is a real challenge, and I don't think you're going to solve any of the parking issues in Levin without actually making a difference there. Despite people's bad behaviour and bad driving, it wouldn't matter if it was the best, widest car park in New Zealand. It wouldn't still cause problems. It also confirms to me that everybody wants a free car park outside the place that they want to go to in Levin, and they want it at the time that they're going to town. So, I mean, some of that data would be really interesting to know what time of the day they're actually trying to find a park. Is it between 11 and 1 every day? Because my experience shows that between probably up till 10 o'clock and certainly after 3:30, 90% of the car parks would be empty. So, there needs to be a little bit more, I think, sort of understanding of why people are going to town and when they're going to town. Because my experience is that most of them don't, want to park right outside the place that they want to go. I do think that we're might be slightly getting ahead of ourselves. I think O2NL is going to change our town centre quite dramatically, and that may be a better opportunity to look at the flexibility and amenity that we can provide with walkways and different things from around and parking as well, because most towns have the experience has been in a lot of towns and cities across the country has been to try to remove car parking or remove cars from the centre of their town, and there's quite a few examples where it's actually been a really bad move. And I can think of Wanganui, I can think of Upper Hutt, I can think of different places like that where that movement of cars is really, really important for the economic benefits of the businesses that are there. In saying that, the service industry and businesses have changed completely in terms of the number of people that are walking through our doors. So, we had less people in town, but a heck of a lot more customers 5 years ago or 10 years ago than we have now. And so it's looking at the type of business. The retail business is completely different from what it used to be. So I don't necessarily feel that it's the services, it's maybe the chemist, the hearing person, the eye person, and those sorts of things that we need to sort of ensure that. But I'm also a bit concerned about some of the comments around footpaths. We've spent a heck of a lot of money and time trying to get our footpaths right. And I'd be really wanting to test some of those comments around our footpaths are no good. I get it that mobility scooters add a different dimension, but if they slowed down a bit, they might be able to get across a bit easier. Anyway, I think there's quite a few philosophical discussions need to be had rather than the practical decisions in terms of, is it our role to actually provide free car parking for workers? Why isn't it the cost for the business that, for instance, New World don't let their workers park in their own car park. They don't like other people not shopping at New World parking in their car park. Is it council's responsibility to actually fund their car park? And there would be other instances like that around as well. So those are the sorts of philosophical conversations that I'd like to have at some stage.
Just want to check in with Mike and Nina whether you're anything you want to add or whether you're generally happy with the direction. Mike.
I'll chip in. I really resonate with what Bernie's had to say in terms of the philosophical conversations. I mean, it's fair to say that to some extent there is, I suppose, has to be some crystal ball gazing going on here, especially with O&L and the town centre development. if I think about what I think is the worst parking we've got, it would be Oxford Street between the lights. But then, you know, when you look north on most days, you've got countless car parks and hardly ever are they filled up. So it's not like we don't have enough parks. It's maybe about how far can people actually be bothered walking is an issue, and you can't fix stuff like that, you know. So the balance of what our role is to do here, and you know where the individual's responsibility for their own mobility comes into it. Apart from sort of questions like that, I think you've done a really great job with this. Thorough, very thorough. So thank you. The only thing I would think I would like to add as a serious consideration is that we only allow electrical vehicle parking outside the fire station.
Thank you, Mike. I think Nina's generally happy with the direction. So look, there were 7 considerations put up there. Are there any gaps in terms of those questions where you feel we haven't addressed them?
Comfortable with the feedback we've got today, and in a moment we'll speak to sort of next steps, which I think some of the things where people have sort of said it feels like there's a further discussion or obviously some more information to be provided with us. We're going to facilitate the opportunity for that and for that discussion to take place. I think there are a few philosophical things, and maybe just to highlight a couple of questions where I think it will be good to further workshop and just go that little bit deeper in terms of the strategy around changing some of those local behaviours. Are we just trying to create a strategy which makes it really easy for people to continue to do perhaps what they've always done, which is park outside the shop, go into the shop, go back into their car? Or do we want a parking strategy that does start to influence how long people stay and how much they spend by encouraging people to park in a place that then requires them to walk past other places and to spend it a little bit longer, to have more exchange moments. Now, exchange moments might be actually a transaction, it might be an interaction with a person. How do we get that balance right between movement and exchange? And so there's a bit in there that we'll look forward to sort of further testing with you. So just to close out on this one here, what we propose we'll be looking to do next is just continue working through the feedback we've received today, and obviously anything additional that gets emailed through. Keep working through that community feedback and look at just how we weave in and incorporate that. We do want to hold some further specific car parking workshops with elected members, some work with retailers and stakeholders just around refining those approaches to the strategy, and there's a person that we're looking to bring in just to assist us with that, and I think you'll enjoy that, and I liken it to one of those coloured beach balls which have the different panels. We can hold a beach ball here and I can be looking at one colour and you can be looking at the other side and see a different colour, and we'll just be encouraging you just to check that if we look at it from different angles, are we still comfortable that this is actually the approach that we want to take going forward? And then from there we'll look to integrate that feedback and develop a final town centre access and car parking strategy, which would then in time be brought to council for adoption. So today's been really beneficial in terms of hearing from you. Great to get the positive praise about the engagement that's been done, and for anyone who participated, who's online, who participated in that process, can we thank you please for the way you have engaged. It's really been really helpful for us as officers, and obviously I think elected members have endorsed that today as well. So thank you for your participation in that today, and we're really comfortable that it gives us a good place to keep taking this forward now.
That's great. Thank you very much, team, for your presentation and for the involvement of elected members. We're going to break now for 11 minutes. 11 minutes, back at 11 o'clock. And just to signal, just to signal that at 11 o'clock, matter which is Levin Town Centre is public excluded, just for the information.